So as you probably know, the new RSC curriculum is going to be mandatory in all schools in England from September 2020. Some schools will be delivering it from September this year, however. There are many issues with relationships and sex education already, though, long before the new RSC has its first teaching. Children are already coming home confused and upset by what is being taught in sex education, relationships education, and policies regarding gender dysphoria. And parents are livid. I see there are three key issues with relationships and sex education. And the first one of those, which concerns me, is about child development. All accepted mainstream child development expertise is sort of been sidelined when legislating for this new curriculum. Now, why would you do that when preparing a curriculum for children? A parent sitting down and talking to a child one-on-one about some of these sensitive subjects, using whatever bespoke resources might be helpful for that individual, is very different from a one-size-fits-all approach delivered to a class of 30 girls and boys whose stages of development can vary from one individual to another by up to 2 years. I think unless a teacher can guarantee that what they're about to teach will produce a similar quality outcome as a one-on-one session, benefiting every single child in that class, not just having them cope with the content or deal with it, but benefiting them, I would say, don't go there. For example, in sex education, images cannot be unseen. They're imprinted on an individual's memory for life. So it's important when giving information about sex education, we have a responsibility to be careful of what is presented to vulnerable young minds. Many individuals and organisations, and in fact, the government itself, have produced sound evidence that giving more information about sex to children at ever younger ages is causing serious problems. According to a government report published last year, the UK is second in Europe for teenage pregnancies. STIs among teenagers and young people are through the roof at epidemic proportions. Many of these STIs are incurable, and some of them are fatal. Also, child-on-child sexual assault is on the increase. There is actually no specific requirement to teach about LGBT in primary schools, according to the DfE. But in some relationships education programs, friendships with someone of the same sex, which is of course the most common friendship among children of primary age, is blended with same-sex adult sexual relationships. There are many different kinds of loving, caring human relationships, and by far from all of them are of a sexual nature. Maternal love, paternal love, friendship, filial love, the bond of camaraderie in a team, simple affection or loyalty, all have potentially strong emotional bonds. But sexual relationships are not differentiated from these kinds of relationships. This is misleading, confusing, and unhelpful. It is not education. Similarly, teachers will be challenged when explaining how two married men can have a baby together in a way a heterosexual couple can. As no mention of sex is allowed in relationships education, presumably they'll have to gloss over with stalks and cabbage patches. On the one hand, they're introducing adult themes to primary school children. On the other, they're patronising them. This is not education. Neither is there such a thing as a gay primary school child. If to be gay is to be sexually attracted to a member of the same sex, For no primary school child is sexually attracted to anyone. They haven't reached that stage of development as a human being. And of course, some people are ex-gay. I have met several such people and have heard the stories of many others. Maybe you know some people like that too. They are rarely allowed a voice in our society, though, as their experience doesn't fit the popular narrative. In the case of gender dysphoria, promoting choice regarding gender, we're effectively using children as clinical guinea pigs. And there is much evidence of transgender regret. This is really irresponsible and, in fact, downright dangerous. Thank you. Teachers can present changing gender to be as easy as switching on and off a light switch. This is arguably criminally misleading children. Life-changing surgery and a lifetime of drugs is not good health. There is evidence to show that puberty blockers retard and even stop physical development in areas like skeletal structure and the brain in children and teenagers. In fact, many of these individuals will never go through puberty. One victim said, "I'm a real live 22-year-old woman with a scarred chest and a broken voice and 5 o'clock shadow because I couldn't face the idea of growing up to be a woman. That's my reality." No fewer than 5 members of staff have resigned from the Tavistock Clinic, where sex change procedures are offered. They are doing this in protest to its policy to put children as young as 4 on the transgender conveyor belt. No questions asked. And if the parent protests, the child will be taken away by social services. I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up, but that's the UK today. And even if you don't agree with everything I'm saying, it has to be acknowledged that these things are in no ways settled. And it's reprehensible for them to be promoted as fact to vulnerable young minds by authority figures endorsed by the state. My second concern, as I see it, is parental rights. Some educators, some parents, and some notable politicians appear to think that the only way children can learn is in school. There seems to be some sort of mesmerisation with the nanny state. But children learn all the time, in all sorts of ways, and parents remain the primary educators for them. And it's important that parents don't abdicate from their responsibility. The premise of all sex and relationships education appears to be that after millennia, overnight, parents have become incapable of talking to children about relationships and sex. Well, I challenge that premise. I'd like to see evidence for it. And I'd also like to see evidence for how a one-size-fits-no-one programme delivered in classes of 30 kids at a time is any better. It is, in fact, an unprecedented step to usurp the authority of parents by the state. There is no right to withdraw from relationships education right through to 16 years. And there is a downgraded right to request withdrawal from sex education in secondary school. While schools have a statutory obligation to consult with parents on RSE, the final decision lies with the head teacher. As Steve Edmonds of the National Governors Association has said, consultation does not provide a parental veto on curriculum content. I appreciate some might feel, because of their sexuality or a related matter, that their voice is not heard or the needs are not being addressed. And I think it's important to welcome mature adult debate on these things. But to subvert parental rights and to attempt, as some have, social engineering through other people's children is not appropriate, and it needs to stop. In addition, the delivery of parts of the RSE curriculum potentially contravene the Human Rights Act of 1998, which states that parents have a right, effectively, to receive education for their children that is in accordance with their own philosophical and religious convictions. It's a serious matter to contravene the Human Rights Act. My third concern would be about religious freedom and religious rights. The majority of people in the UK have a religion. That's tens of millions of people. Religions often have strong boundaries around sex and sexuality. Some of the content of sex education and relationships education, the majority of these people would disagree with on religious grounds. Religion is a protected characteristic according to the Equalities Act. The Equalities Act was designed to prevent discrimination in the workplace, not to force acquiescence in the classroom or anywhere else. And in fact, the Public Order Act of 1986 specifically protects the right to criticise homosexual and religious conduct. Aside from this, RSE potentially contravenes the Equalities Act by subordinating one protected characteristic to another. Oh, and on the subject of the Equalities Act, the No Outsiders programme, which is being protested against in Birmingham, is marketed as an Equalities Act programme. Now, there are 9 protected characteristics in the Equalities Act. So you'd think there would be approximately, about 11% coverage on each of those in such a programme. But hang on a minute. There's 0% on race, 0% on age, 0% on pregnancy, and 0% on religion. An Equalities Act programme that ignores 4 of the 9 protected characteristics, that's hilarious. On that basis alone, it should be chucked out. Anyway, despite abysmal results, the government seems determined to continue with the same vein, troubling, confusing and misleading children in the name of education with this new RSE curriculum. As they refuse to listen to researchers, academics, experts in this matter, reject sound child development expertise, and also ignore the negative results of their own public consultation, it is now necessary to let parents and carers know what's going on. And this is where the Schoolgate campaign comes in. We have 5 key aims. The first is to inform parents of the imminent introduction of the new RSE curriculum, which is being achieved. I have to say, we can't take all the credit for that one. We are going to alert parents of the potential issues. We are to direct them to sources of additional information and support. We also inform them of their rights, and we encourage them to engage in consultation with their schools. I appreciate that maybe not all schools will deliver bad RSE. Each one will have a different approach, some with in-house provision, while others use or adapt off-the-shelf programmes. But the only way a parent can really know what is going on with RSE is to ask. Ofsted has noted that while there is a requirement for schools to consult with parents about existing sex education lessons, schools have been very poor in achieving satisfactory levels with this. How well do you think they will do at consulting on the new curriculum? Schools must be challenged over every piece of inappropriate content. Their statutory obligation is to give a sample to parents of what they're going to teach. But I encourage schools to be completely transparent in this matter. That's the way to gain the confidence, trust and cooperation of parents. If there's nothing to hide, what's the problem? So there are different ways to be involved in the Schoolgate campaign. A primary activity is at an appropriate distance from the school gate, 1 or 2 campaigners are offering informational leaflets to parents as they pick up their children from primary school. Please note, we are not having a go at particular teachers or schools. We just know where primary school parents will be at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, weekdays. So that makes our campaign perfectly targeted. Others have leafleted on high streets or in shopping centres. This might be suitable if someone is not free during the week and maybe they want to just do half an hour on a Saturday afternoon, for example. Some have just taken a handful and given to friends and family. Parents of children in local clubs have been leafleted. And leaflets have also been taken to places of worship. And for anyone who cannot participate in that sort of campaigning, you're always welcome to donate to the printing and postage of said leaflets. We're not a protest campaign, though we have been presented like that in the media sometimes. We're also not opposing RSC primarily on religious grounds. We welcome help from people of all faiths and none. I suppose of the 3 very serious issues raised by the RSC curriculum, our primary focus is the issue of child development and how age-inappropriate RSC content can be. I'd encourage everyone to think how they can contribute in some way to the campaign. Every effort counts. This is for your children, your nephews, your nieces, your grandchildren. It affects everyone. Thousands of leaflets have already been distributed around the country. We have guidelines and free speech information for everyone involved in public distribution. And we have a growing network of regional groups. If you would like to join in, please make yourself known to me or one of my associates at the Support for the Family table outside. Alternatively, you can get in touch through the contact form on the website. Our website is schoolgatecampaign.org. The majority of parents do not want RSC for their primary school children. They need to be informed and encouraged to challenge the schools with every lesson content that is inappropriate for their child. A grassroots ground campaign is what's needed to make this happen and to make the government think again. Nanny does not know best. Thank you.